My ultimate revenge has been complete. Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. 2020 has been quite a year, and we are finally wrapping up Trade Tuesday Season 3 with our final end goal today. So let's go ahead and do a recap, just in case you've forgotten, or this just happens to be your first video within this series. Trade Tuesday is something that I do where I start off with a really cheap garbage guitar, and I buy, trade, and sell my way all the way up into something higher end. Now, this particular season actually started with a scam. I had purchased a 1998 Gibson Les Paul Studio in a black gloss finish, but what they sent me was a mystery box with ammonia in it and a toy guitar. So for my funny April Fool's joke this year in 2020, I decided to review that toy guitar, and I said I would be starting Trade Tuesday Season 3 with that guitar. Now, in my mind, that was just a complete joke. I wasn't actually going to follow through with that. It was an April Fool's thing, but I did put it up on my website for $100, leaving it up to my audience if they wanted it to happen or not. I really didn't want anybody to buy it, but there was one kind patron of my show who loves this series that wanted to see it happen. So while yes, I did technically turn that toy guitar into this $2,000 guitar, because I did do that, but a more honest title is taking $100 and turning it into what we got today. So feel free to check out this playlist, but as a quick recap, my first act was splitting that $100 into 4 different items. We got a 60s, 70s Gibson manual, a 70s pickup card, as well as a warranty card, and a full 1978 Gibson catalog, and we had $20 left. Now, I had a lot of people thinking I was crazy buying that stuff, but we easily turned that catalog into $210. And we sold that warranty card really quickly, and that tripled our money without even selling half the items to $271, where we purchased the Hondo Death Dagger. Such a freaky, weird guitar that was like spray painted a weird color. Thankfully, the guy who did purchase it, he ended up refinishing it, doing all new electronics, and it's back into session now. But we net $392 out of that, and then I split that into the Electra Omega LP and the T-Rex Spin Doctor pedal, leaving us with $42 left. We met up with that guy, we did the trade. Unfortunately, there were some underlying issues with that Electra, but we still powered through it all, and after selling all that stuff, we had $443. Still didn't have luck selling the 70s pickup card and the 60s, 70s manual. But that changed next episode when I purchased the Gem Jr. with a case and the Effector Explorer. And that's the episode in episode 5 when we finally sold those other things. So it was all coming together real nicely at $687.50. From there, we purchased that unusual Gibson Sonics logoed version, and that gave us a huge jump up when we net $941.50 out of it. From there, I purchased the N225, which gave us $971, and combining everything together there, we had $1,113 when we purchased that 2018 Gibson SG Jr., which ended up doubling our money because I got a fantastic deal on it. So last time I left you guys with $1,637 in the bank. I only spent $1,600 to purchase this guitar that's worth anywhere between $2,000 to $2,500 at top market value. And I promised you guys, instead of ending with a custom shop guitar this time, we would end with a studio as the ultimate revenge against that scammer. But I did not want to just end this with any studio. Unfortunately, the one that I was going for this whole entire time, it sold. I wanted a 1983 Night Violet Les Paul Studio. It's technically a custom shop guitar because it has the custom shop decal, but that simply means it was just a limited edition run. But at the very birth of the Les Paul Studio, there were 3 different versions. So I decided it would be great canon to get the top of the line version, because it just happens to have custom in the name. So even though I didn't have to get a custom shop guitar, I still wanted to, stick with our theme that we've done with the other ones. Trade Tuesday Season 1, we ended with a Gibson R8 1958 reissue. Season 2, we ended with that custom shop Coppercaster. But what did I get to end Season 3? Let's find out. Thank you, Mr. Scammer, for allowing me to do all this and purchase this. That is beautiful. And let me tell you, it's not a fake. It's actually here. So this is a 1984 Gibson Les Paul Studio Custom. Now the Studio Customs, they got custom binding on the front. You can see it's the 7-ply multiple layers, and this is actually a really nice one because it has an unusual 2-piece top. It's slightly off-center, but that's okay. And it appears we've got something weird going on with our pickup there. It must have got jostled around in shipping, but essentially that's the only difference between this and a regular Les Paul Studio of the day. Sometimes you'll find these get ebony fretboards, sometimes they don't, but these were thinner than a Les Paul standard, and sometimes you can find ones that also have that custom shop edition decal. Like I just recently looked at one of those in an unboxing segment where it actually did not even have a top to it. And these guys have alder bodies. So they're just kind of interesting. This one's got some buckle rash and whatnot going on here. But I actually purchased this for another reason. So I can thank the scammer once again for, helping me go on this journey, because I needed this guitar as a comparison piece. Now, a comparison piece to what? A super secret thing of Gibson history that no one has ever talked about. The guitar is so rare, there's only about, 5 or 10 of them out there, and nobody has ever known what to call it. I'm about to crack that story wide open, and this guitar is a part of that. So Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed Trade Tuesday Season 3 here with me. This is going to be our finale episode for this one. If you're sad I didn't trade all the way to a custom shop guitar, I'm sorry. But if you want to know what the next move would have been, I would have sold this net about 2,000 or so out of it. And then I would have used that to buy like a custom shop Firebird. But in my opinion, these Studio Customs are so cool. They're kind of a niche market. I would rather have this than a low-end custom shop guitar anyways. So a Studio Custom, a perfect way to end out this series. Let's go ahead and throw this one on the workbench, take an individual look at its parts and specs, and fix whatever's wrong with this pickup. Inside our little trophy piece, if you're flabbergasted at how much these things can sell for, it comes down to rarity and what these things are made of and how much they weigh, and what types of pickups that actually came stock. These have Tim Shaw PAF humbuckers in here. This set, if you were to take them outside of the guitar, you could get upwards of $800 just for the pickups. Because it's the same thing that they used in the Les Paul Customs and a bunch of other stuff that people might need to restore. So it's very common for people to have bought these up, stripped out all the important parts, and then sold them off. So finding one that still has the original stuff is kind of getting harder these days. But this is where a big bulk majority of these things come from. I mean, they cost just as much as a modern day studio themselves. But the other thing that makes these things interesting is they're actually made out of alder. Because the Studio Custom was made from 83 to 85, you might find some stragglers in 86. But it's in 85 when they switched them back to the mahogany, if I remember my stories correctly here. This one definitely has that alder body. You can see it looks way different in here. And it also, I believe, has a 2-piece alder top to it. And that's the reason why you're seeing vertical finish checking. Alder and Carina, it checks vertically like this, just due to the way that it ages. So it's kind of something to be expected when you're building a guitar out of that. So if you're ever looking at like an 80s Flying V, the Metallica styled ones, they'll do the same thing, and it's for the exact same reason. Now, on certain guitars, you got to be careful. Vertical finish checking actually can also mean that there's moisture damage. But on this one, I doubt that's the case. As far as originality, everything's looking good on this one, except for somebody has definitely replaced the springs for this neck pickup. That's why it kind of flopped up on here. As far as the bridge, it's your regular made in Germany Schaller style that these were using stock. And a full weight gold tailpiece. That's the other thing that made the Studio Customs fancy, is the gold hardware. Whereas the Studio Standards, they lasted all the way until 87, but they only had the single ply binding around the body. And the chrome hardware. Now, unfortunately, our pickguard has left an unfortunate scar right here, but stock from the factory, you would get a single-ply pickguard like that. However, these do look pretty stellar when you install a custom pickguard on them. But since this one isn't aged, I won't do it. Take a look at our beautifully aged speed knobs. Those are going to look great under blacklight. And again, finding a two-piece top, kind of uncommon on these guys. And the other reason that these things are cult classics is because they're thinner than a regular Les Paul. So most Les Pauls are about 2 inches with the top. This guy's only 1.82. So in the land of the Norland era guitars, they're super heavy, right? These guys look fancy, they play great, but they're lightweight, a little bit thinner, they don't break your back as much. We'll throw it on the scale here in a minute. But moving on to our fretboard, my favorite feature of these guys is you get legitimate mother-of-pearl dot inlays. These aren't cheap acrylic plastics. And I normally don't like dot inlays unless there's binding, and this one has it, and it just makes it look so fancy, like a dot-necked 335. But yet when you get here, it's just a fancy Les Paul custom until you look at the back. Now I can tell somebody has done some fret work on this. They've kind of rounded all the edges here, so I guess that makes it easier to play, but it is a slight modification. But the frets themselves, they actually don't show too much divoting wear. Nice and low, but they still have their crowns. As far as neck specs, 1.69 inches at the nut. That increases to 2.04 by the 12th. Thin 60s necks on these, 0.8 inches at the first fret neck depth. And by the 12th, it stays fairly consistent, 0.94, but remember, you're kind of coming up to that heel there. Truss rod covers are blank on these guys. They don't say Les Paul Custom. Sometimes people will add them though. But our truss rod's in good shape on this one. And you can see some light bubbling to the lacquer. That's pretty common on these guys too, but unfortunately it's there. Same thing with the wing line showing. That means there has been a little bit of separation, but it's nothing that's like gonna keep spreading or anything. But keep your eye on it, just in case it ever does split. You can re-glue it, but it's very common to see those lines on these. I'm not worried about it. Moving on to the back, after I polished it, it's so shiny. It's a good thing I have a polarizing filter so we can cut straight through that. But it looks like definitely a 3-piece body here. And somebody has really went to town on this guitar. That's caused by a buckle just rubbing against the backside of this guitar. You can see all the worming marks. Now unfortunately it caused the lacquer to kind of bubble a little bit and it's chipped off right there. But I was just polishing this. It's not like flaking off. Now if you were to pick at it you could make it come off, but let's just leave it be. But there you can see your alder body. But it does look like there's been a few small modifications in here. So we still got the original pickups and the original pots that date it to 1984. You can see the date codes right there, but somebody's upgraded the capacitors in these to a Bumblebee-esque looking cap. So that's a minor upgrade. I mean, these would have just had regular ceramic disc capacitors, so I'm sure that's a nice thing, but there's definitely been other pickups in here at one point in time, but those were professionally installed back again. But here's where you can really start to see the thinner body come into play, especially here, because your three-way toggle switch is like all the way up here. It just barely even fits in this guitar. But we've got the golden jack plate, and somebody's replaced the strap buttons on this one. Not a big deal, at least they're gold. And these guys do have maple necks. Sometimes. I mean, the specs on these vary example to example. Definitely check your headstock for a custom shop edition decal, because that's usually when you find some like weird spec that all the other ones don't. But you've got finish checking in all the usual areas on these guys. Definitely nothing to worry about on this one. And our serial number dates it to 1984, 121st day of the year, 536 in production at the Nashville plant. Well, there we go. This is actually a particularly light one, 7 pounds, 15 ounces. If you don't know Norland era guitars, 8 pounds is just unheard of for a Les Paul. I mean, most of them are about 10 pounds, some go all the way up to 14, but that 10 to 12 range is what you normally find. So being able to get a beautiful looking vintage guitar like this one, and it only weighing 8 pounds, that's why these have become cult classics, and they sell just as much as some Les Paul customs do. It's a strange market out there, but at least now you understand why. So let's go ahead, plug this one in, and hear how it sounds. in all, what are my final thoughts on this particular example? I can see why somebody played it as much as they did. I didn't have a lot of time to play this one today, but it's really resonant, it's super lightweight, and whatever modification those people did with those caps, it's really strange. Like normally when you roll down the tone, it just becomes so dark, muddy, and muffled, but this one, it almost seems like the tones aren't working at all, but yet when you switch to the clean tones, you can tell it's doing a little bit of a something. It still changes your tone, but it gets rid of all that muddiness. And it's kind of interesting to play. So that was a nice modification. But I couldn't think of a better guitar to end Trade Tuesday Season 3 with than a Les Paul Studio Custom, the king of the studios. Who cares about that solid black studio? We've done it. We traded our way from a crappy $1 toy guitar all the way to this. Thank you, Troglodytes, for tuning in today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode. Take care.